Well, with Insidious 4 The Last Key coming out this weekend, and the possibility that the Insidious franchise will have all of its credibility dragged through the mud, I figured let's take this franchise back to its roots and talk about one of the creepiest films that has come out of the 2010s. Insidious, if you couldn't already tell from the title, it's the first film within the Insidious quadrilogy, and it's about a mother and father played by Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, whose son gets possessed by a demon. So they bring in a demonologist to try to suck the demon out of their son, and we go from there, and we have a really, really effective horror movie. And you know, the nice thing about the first Insidious film is just how fresh it is. I'm not just talking about from a horror movie standpoint, though we will get into that. It's James Wan himself. This guy came in after being known for just doing smaller budgeted films like the first Saw movie and for a little movie called Dead Silence, and he knocked it out of the park with Insidious. And now everybody knows James Wan is one of the best directors of horror working today. And one of the reasons for that is just because his use of props, his use of ambiance, the tone of the film, and everything surrounding what happens to these characters. But let's get into this. Let's talk about the horror element, because up until Insidious, good horror movies, good quality horror was really barely able to be found. I love the tone that Insidious has. The movie is creepy, there's a lot of mythology to it, and the movie just keeps you on edge. And that word, mythology, that is very important, because if there's a couple of things I want in a good horror film, number one, it is good characters that you can cling on to, that you can care about, but it's also a mythology that you get invested in. And if there is another important element to horror movies, it is ultimately the soundtrack, because if you want a horror movie to be as creepy as it can be, have a great soundtrack, and make sure if you're going to have jump scares, have those jump scares be effective, because let's be honest, jump scares, they're a cliche in horror movies at this point, but if they're used correctly, if they're done well, they can be so effective that you'll think about the movie when you're trying to go to sleep at night. And ultimately, that is what happened with Insidious for me. But I wouldn't be able to be sold on all the mythology or any of the other stuff that was in here if it wasn't for the stellar performances. Rose Byrne and Patrick Wilson carry most of this movie, and they do a phenomenal job. Whenever they're scared, whenever they're curious about something, every little emotion they portray, I believed in them. I believed in their characters, and I wanted them to find out more about about the demon that was possessing their son. In all honesty, the little kid actor in this movie is so good. He's got a bright future ahead of him. I have been cheering this guy on ever since I saw Insidious. I don't know what he's done since, but he did a great job in this movie for sure. Now, the problems I have with the movie, for the most part, it's just the dialogue in the script. I think the dialogue in the script worked for what it did, but there were a few conversations, there were a few elements inside of this screenplay that I do not think worked whatsoever. In fact, some of the dialogue came off as a bit cheesy, and sometimes when we were supposed to have a lot of tension inside of a certain scene, something would happen and that tension would just break. And towards the last act of the film, the haunted house element of it picked up so much that it just started to feel more like an amusement park, and it didn't really seem as scary anymore. But although those problems are there, I cannot fault James Wan. His direction in this film, how he brought this entire mythology and everything in this film to life, is breathtaking, it's beautiful, and as a horror movie fan, I loved pretty much every single part of Insidious. This is a film I watch every single year in preparation for Halloween, or in preparation when a new Insidious film is coming out. And guys, I can't really tell you just how much I love this movie. Although those faults are in there, it's still a great horror film, and it's just a great way to have a lot of fun with your friends. And I'll say that Insidious is a good casual watch. And before we leave off, guys, I just want to leave you with a big apology. Unfortunately, this weekend, I'm not going to be able to see any of the movies that have come out because a giant snowstorm just hit my area, and all the theaters I would usually go to see movies, they have completely shut down until the weekend is over so they can do some cleaning. So I apologize for that, but I promise you I will get you those reviews next week. But until then, I really hope you enjoyed this review, and as always, it is what you say that matters. So, what do you think of Insidious? Insidious. What do you think of the entire Insidious franchise? Whatever your thoughts may be, leave them down below so we can get a conversation started. And if you've enjoyed what you have seen here and you want to see more, click right there and subscribe and become part of the fray of nerds who love cinema. You all have a fantastic day.